I think many of you have been very generous in walking up and complimenting about various things, including the preparation, the facilities, the food, etc. My best feedback would be when, at the end of 2 days, when I would say that all that you saw physically was all, of course, good, but every session was more mind-blowing than the other, and it egged each one of us to go back and do that little thing to keep going in the direction of becoming an innovation-driven nation or region. In that context, I am so delighted to have the only word that comes to my mind is 4 rock stars as far as innovation is concerned. Absolutely wonderful session I'm sure this is going to be. So I'm going to be the least visible guy in this session. I'm even going to skip introductions. All of you are, like 2 clicks away about finding out more about these eminent gentlemen. I'll just make a couple of opening remarks and then go in the order of Professor Gadi Ariav. He will come and present a very macro picture on what makes Israel, Israel. What are the imperatives that he sees for us to learn and also build a mutually beneficial relationship. Then we'll have Aaron. He can come in and share his success story about how Weizmann Institute of Science with Yeda Innovation Company has built this beautiful model of taking research into innovative products into an innovation company, and then you go to market and convert that knowledge back to money, as Professor Mashelkar was saying in his keynote address. Subsequently, I will request Jay to share his experiences being the most successful incubator of incubators in this region, not just India. And my absolute belief, looking at the work that they have done over the last couple of years, is that they're just about getting started. If T-Hub becomes the largest and most successful by a mile in the next 10 years, I'll be very surprised. So that would be Jay next. And then the last would be Professor Raghuram. Last weekend, there was the Israel Center inaugurated on the IIM Bangalore campus. I had the good fortune of receiving his invitation. We were there. Perhaps Weizmann on that side, on the Israeli side, and IIM Bangalore on this side, there is something that we are trying to cook in our minds. Let's see where we go, but we would love to hear his thoughts as well. Just a couple of thoughts, and I would want us to be very humble and very hungry and learn from this nation. When we became independent in 1947, with all our challenges, we had this huge region, huge land, and 30 crores of people, nobody snatching away your land, which we had in 1947. Look at a country like Israel. 1948, they didn't even know that what is going to be the size and shape of the country. The country itself was founded through crowdfunding. When the founder of the nation went around asking the richest Jewish people successful across the world to donate, he didn't succeed. He succeeded when we went to the poorest of the Jewish people and he began to get a few dollars from each guy. And that's how they came. They actually acquired land in a private trust. I will leave you with a little bit of a homework to do when you go back. But from there, this country today is a brilliant innovation sandbox that is successful for us. And in my view, every city and its leadership should try to emulate Israel, not India as a country. We are too unwieldy. Hyderabad as a region, Bangalore as a city, Delhi as a state. If we have 3 or 4 leaders learning from this place, building very symbiotic relationships, and then make it a success. In India, one metro took, I think, 60 years. Now we have metros happening in 10 cities in the next 10 years. It will get to 25 Israel kind of ecosystems in the country over the next 10 to 20 years. I will pause here and request Professor Gadi Ariav to come. He is a professor of strategy and innovation and is an India expert. The rest I would leave you to discover as we move forward. Gadi.
Thank you. Thank you, Satya. You can tell that I'm an experienced presenter. The one thing you don't want to do after lunch is get the room dark and show slides. So I'm not taking any chance. And the truth is actually, you know, the bigger version of what I would like to say takes about 70 slides, so I gave up on that. The summary of what I want to say actually have been said by the people who spoke before me. To some extent, if I want to give the sort of the very bottom line of the Israeli story, is that if you listen carefully to Dr. Mashelkar, okay, the vision that he expressed actually materialized in Israel by circumstances. It's not by design. So that's point number one. Point number two is that many people ask me, can we copy? What is it? So we understood the story of Israel, and I'll tell you the story of Israel, or the sort of succinct description of it. So what? What does that mean in Hyderabad and Delhi and Bangalore and so on? And my answer is, and I apologize if I'm sort of disturbing the sort of fantasies. I think it's impossible to copy it, but I would say you can be inspired by it, and that goes to what Satya has just said, okay? And I'll mention the size of Israel. We make a lot of noise, but we are very, very small, okay? So I'll give you the sense of it, or I'll say it right now. You know, in the sort of larger metropolitan area of Bangalore, BBMP, Bruhat, Bengaluru, Mahapalika, 12 million people, Israel is 2/3 of it. So with all due respect, you know, we are 2/3 of Bangalore. So yes, you're right. In terms of, you know, where could that possibly be a source of inspiration? It is in Bangalore, in Hyderabad area, in the national capital region and so on. More than that, and that'd be my final point, is that you can copy it, you can be inspired by it, connect to it. Connect, build a business model where there's a network, and Israel is part of your global strategy network. American companies have discovered that way back. IBM has been doing that for 50 years now. And about one part of statistics, and it's a comment about what Satya has said, given the size of Israel, we always like to have statistics per capita. Because we're so small, so all our statistics are jumping up to the air. It's a very small country, okay, in terms of the size of the economy, size of the people, and so on. So if you are sort of looking into the sort of the particulars of the country, okay, as I said, you can create examples of that. You can create replications of it by inspiration, by trying to mimic it, this experience. And that is what I'm trying to tell you. And let me sort of do it in a more structured way. We call the Startup Nation because how many of you have read the book, Startup Nation? Okay, 3 people, okay. Thank God, many more people have bought the book. And so the 2 authors, Dan Senor and Sol Singer, have amassed significant royalties and actually established the Startup Nation Central in Israel. It's a sort of organization that actually would help you to connect to Israeli enterprises. There's one of their platforms is a finder. You define what you're looking for, and the finder will help you to identify that. And actually, there's a service going on along with that. So yes, the Startup Nation book has been a wonderful PR campaign. And but actually, if you peel the layers around the myth, At the core of the Israeli phenomenon, I would say, is imagination. The ability to imagine products, ability to imagine different ways of doing things, that is the core. In terms of entrepreneurship, we're not any better than any other country. And coming to India and teaching Marwaris how to do business is not, doesn't make much sense, okay? So where do we excel? We excel in imagination. And to a large extent, again, my final opening comment is that Israel is an anomaly. If you look at the world, you don't look at the geographical map, you look at the clusters, a cluster map. A cluster is an economic concept that identifies a critical mass of players in a particular area, let's say technology in particular, in this sense. It could be wine, it could be fashion, it could be textile, okay? And you look at the number of players, people who are actually engaged in the industry, people who are financing the industry, people who are providing playing as subcontractor to the industry, governments, academic institutions. If this thing has sort of 4 or 5 digit number of participants, 1,000 and up, 10,000, we have, Silicon Valley will be 10,000, close to 10,000. Israel has 6,000 sort of technology companies, startup in the ecosystem. Israel is a single cluster among the 19 clusters in the world. It is unusual in the sense that it is not part of a larger economy. This is it. That's what you get. And people have to sort of be reminded that this is the story. Size-wise, if you want to get a sense of the size of the country, I told you it's about 8.5 million people, which, at some point the Minister of Agriculture, Indian Minister of Agriculture came and sort of we were talking, and he talked about the Israeli agricultural sector. And he said, how many farmers do you have in this country? And I said, give or take 70,000 farmers. So he said, okay, this is a rounding error in Indian statistics. So we're small. We're very small. And, size-wise, if you take a line that starts in Mumbai, it ends here in Hyderabad, give or take 600 kilometers, you make this line 40 kilometers wide, this is Israel. That's the whole story. Half of it desert, half of it land that can be cultivated, 8.5 million people sitting down on this thing, okay? What I will do, and anyone who is interested, you'll have my email and you can find out more. But what I've been doing for the last 15 years is teach global strategy. And one of the discoveries that we have people have come to understand about globalization is that we have underestimated the importance of distance. Okay, and one of the questions that Satya, indefatigable Satya, I would join everyone who commended you for the effort, because we met by chance in Israel, and here I am in Hyderabad, so that goes to the energy. You have to do homework. You have to recognize the distance. One of the questions that Satya said is that what is the key ingredient that might make collaboration between Indians and Israelis succeed? And I'm focusing on the business culture. I think everything else, and you may hear it by my colleagues, if not, we will say it in the panel, the fundamentals are right. We're complementary, we have value systems, we're ancient civilization, young nations, and so on. Everything is fine, okay? I think it's time to stop talking and start doing. And part one in doing is to do homework. And the homework in global strategy is actually a list that of 5 items. If you have no time other than to do one thing, study the history of the place. The history and the economic history. Israel has long history and very short. 150 years is, that's a revival of Jewish settlement in Israel. Before that, there was very few Jews in Israel to begin with. We celebrate right now 100 years to the Balfour. Arthur Balfour was foreign minister of the United Kingdom, and he, in 1917, sent the letter that sort of granted the right to the Jewish people to resettle in Israel. So we're talking about very short history in that sense. Item number 2 is political economy. We are a parliamentary democracy. I will not go into that. One thing you don't have to teach Indians is about politics. You write politics with such a big P. Our P is slightly smaller than that, but we are very vibrant and we argue all the time. And in that sense, Indians and Israelis are pretty much the same. The legal system is fiercely independent, which again can be said on the Indian system. It's Western, but it's overloaded. So, although I say overloaded, you say overloaded, this is different sort of definitions of overload. And business culture, which I'll sort of say a few words, and this will be sort of the bulk of what I want to say. And finally the country linkages, okay? We have 300, by last count, 322 R&D centers of Fortune 500 companies. And I'll repeat, 322 companies from Fortune 500 have established R&D centers in Israel. Given all the smallness that I've said before, yeah, thank you. And that is the model. This is the model. And as I said, most of them American. Chinese have discovered that. We have very early Indian companies. TCS is one. Infosys is another one that are sort of moving gingerly and following the model. You acquire an Israeli company and you make it your R&D center. And that's how it allows you to sort of scout around. And when you find another technology or another venture that fits in the white space of your offering, you sort of merge and acquire it and leave it in Israel. It has to be, you take the fish out of the water, it's a completely different story. You can eat it. It's not alive anymore. You leave it in Israel. And that was Google's experience with Waze. What do I want to tell you about culture? The three sort of keywords that I would highlight. One is that it's Jewish, and I'll explain what it means. Basically, loathing hierarchy, learning by questions, no sense of sort of distance. Actually, the word Israel, which is, everyone says Israel, we call ourselves Israel, is a biblical term which relates to sort of a story in the Bible where one of our sort of fathers, Jacob, fought with God and won. So the logic of challenging everything is that, yes, you can fight with God and you can win over God. And the meaning of the word, of the name Israel, Sarayim Elohim, is sort of fought with God and succeeded. That's a very fundamental, sort of almost DNA nature in Israel of challenging the conventions. The second one is Mediterranean. And, Raghu and Satya have been in Israel. It's a very extremely lively place. Tel Aviv is a city that never sleeps, okay? I'm told you've taken the bikes to the seashore in the morning. You can sort of rent a bike kind of thing that you can get in the hotel, go to seashore, have a sort of a swim for a while, come back. If you want to party all night, that's what our students are doing. That's something that you can do. And finally, there's two words in Hebrew, which is sort of Yeh Beseder. I mean, I can do the exercise if I want to teach you that, but you can say it Yeh Beseder. Yeh Beseder is literally everything will be fine, but it is not Shaltaheh. It's not we'll manage when it comes. It's an optimist statement that when we come to the moment, okay, things will work out very well. The fundamental optimism is some people will say stupidity is a requirement for entrepreneurship. Okay, you have to sort of look at that, and Professor Dr. Mashilkar sort of listed the sort of the traditional leader and the new leader. The traditional leader, okay, I can tell you why it will not work. So I'm telling all these sort of people why it could not work. And I said, yeah, I understand that, you're right, but I can do better. And that is the sort of the essence of Ihyeh Beseder. So this is sort of the three words that I'd like to describe. Then let me give you the sentence that, how I'm doing on time? 3 more minutes? Okay. Each of the I'll say it slowly and I'll say a word about that. But this is the sort of the defining sentence of Israeli business culture. Compare it with the Indian experience, and when we on the panel we can explore what can it be, so what, okay? So I would say the Israeli propensity to innovate, to create, and to venture is a complex cultural and social base. It has complex social and cultural base. And that's why it's so difficult to copy. You can't make Indians Israelis, and you cannot make Israelis Indians, okay? It just doesn't jive. So let me read it slowly, okay? And it's sort of years in the making. So it's driven by necessity and survival instinct. It is fed by military experience. I'll get into each of these with a sort of one more sentence. So, driven by necessity and survival instinct, fed by military experience, marked by attitude of irreverence, enabled by resilient acceptance of failure, informality, and relaxed attitude towards hierarchy, made imaginable by legacy of entrepreneurship and public policy, and enhanced by cultural diversity. This is the summary of insights about what makes Israel special and what drives that as an innovation hub, okay? And just, again, to be, I'm coming from science. I'm a scientist. I'm not sort of looking at it bright-eyed, and I will definitely look at the sort of reality, okay? The scope of Israeli high-tech is about 15% of the workforce, much more significant part of the export. And we do have the Indian problem. We share the same thing, which economists call dual economy. There's a locomotive that runs fast, very successful, global standard and sort of player, but there's 90% or 85% of the economy that had to catch up, okay? So our problem is not, it's not that everyone is a startup and not everyone is doing a venture. We have our own share of difficulties, and that's another topic. Let me say 2 sentences about each of these, and then I'll conclude, okay? So driven by survival instinct. The Jewish history and Israeli history has been, made us think that maybe we will not be there tomorrow. So there's a very distinct notion of, our existence is threatened. Is it true? No. We're a regional superpower, our economy is thriving, we're doing very well, but that's the DNA. So 3,000 years of persecution have made us, as Andy Grove would say, paranoids. And, and we carry the trauma of the Holocaust. I don't know if all are you familiar with it, but in the World War II, the Nazi Germany was determined to annihilate the Jewish people. 6 million people have died in a sort of a death machine. This is something that we carry. We're a post-traumatic society that carries the notion that maybe someone will annihilate us and we will not be tomorrow. That creates that attitude that we must deal with problems. We must solve problems. It's fed by military experience. 72% of the cohort is drafted. Boys for 2 years, the age of 18. Boys for 3 years, girls for 2 years, okay? And this is a unifying experience in the society. I was drafted to the military computing center, and I met people that I would not have met any other way, okay? You don't stay in your strata, social strata. You are mixed up in the military, okay? The other effect of the military is that you are given irresponsible responsibilities, basically. I was a CTO of the Logistics Command at the age of 25. It's unheard of. It's irresponsible. But then my friends led to combat group of sort of battalions and groups of people to their death. It was a life and death decision. So from a very early age, we are facing real life decisions. At the age of 23, 24, when we finally get to universities, we have significant life experience and, in many cases, more and more, very significant, very deep technology training. Quite a few of the innovations that you see today, mostly in the ICT, Weizmann Institute, Aaron is going to speak after me. If you look at Israel, the significant cluster has to do with information and communication technologies, and that is directly related to the investment in military R&D. Marked by attitude of irreverence. It is not uncommon in Israel to find a private who is telling the chief of staff, four-star general, what they should do. No inhibition whatsoever. Actually, if you listen to four-star generals in Israel, and when they tell you, when I have a difficult problem, I'm going to eat lunch at the private's mess. I'm going to the soldier mess and I'm sitting down. In my lecture, I have pictured, you couldn't tell who is the general and who are the soldiers, okay? That notion of distance, which would be almost unimaginable in most circumstances in India, is very, very fundamental, okay? We go by first name, we call our prime minister, president, everyone down the road, okay, by nicknames, okay? My passport number is God, okay? Nobody knows me as God. I mean, I always go by Gadi. Gadi is the diminutive form of that. Benjamin Netanyahu, our prime minister, everybody calls him Bibi. Our president, Reuven Rivlin, is Ruby. Okay, if you say who's Reuven Rivlin, nobody will know. Ruby, yes, we know. So that is the notion of irreverence. The resilient acceptance of failure is probably another distinct and very unique feature, okay? Our level of success in entrepreneurship is not any different than anywhere in the world. It's the same. We're not succeeding more than others. That's important to remember in a very realistic view of Israel, okay? We have the one which provides the 10x, and we have 3 or 4 that provides sort of 2x, and the rest is money down the drain, okay? So in that sense, we are very, very much the same. What is unique in Israeli culture is that acceptance of failure. If you try, it's okay if you fail. If you fail because you lousy and made wrong decisions and stupid decisions, and you try to find out where is the guy who drove the better place, the largest value destruction in the history of Israel, $500 million. He doesn't show up because he was an arrogant megalomaniac. But if you look at the others, okay, if you put a lot of effort, if you tried hard, if you did the right thing, and circumstances created a situation where you cannot succeed, so be it. Let's get to the next one. So we don't mourn for a while. The social status is not affected. You can go on. So that's the acceptance. Informality I've mentioned. The legacy of entrepreneurship, as I said, 150 years ago, there was nothing in Israel. There were about, 100,000 Jews in Israel, 600,000 Arabs. We started from scratch pretty much. And so the story of, trying, succeeding, making that, coming to the point where Satya can describe it in such colorful, is empowering, okay? Again, I hope India will have ringing stories, and India and Israel collaboration will have ringing stories that will empower people to try. There's a contribution from public policy. The incubation is something that was done in Israel and was very instrumental. We have public policy that does the financing of it. Actually, and it was mentioned in one of the, the comments that Dr. Mashelkar has mentioned, the entire Israeli ICT cluster came to be in 1992 where the government has struck a deal with 10 funds and said, I put $10 million, you put $10 million, upside is yours, downside is mine. So it took the risk of the investment. There was this sort of the spark that created the ICT, sort of the Israeli startup nation, pretty much. Okay? So there was an act of government. Universities are providing sort of the human resources, less so in terms of intellectual property, but that's a debate that we can take later on. Finally, diversity. You know, if you want someone who speaks Marathi and do a call center, you can find them in Israel. You want someone who speaks Bengali or Malayalam and so on, or in Dalia, someone who speaks Chinese in local accent, let alone Russia, in all, you can find them in Israel. Almost 180 countries are represented where the Israeli diaspora came in. So that's the story. Let me repeat it. Driven by necessity and survival instincts, fed by military experience, marked by attitude of irreverence, enabled by a resilient acceptance of failure in informality, made imaginable by legacy of entrepreneurship, and enhanced by diversity. And I invite you to connect to that phenomenon. Let me stop here.
I would request Aaron to take the stage, podium, and listen to his story of how the whole success happened at Weizmann over the last few decades. Over to you.
Satya, thank you so much. I'm lucky to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Netta Pesach, who's part of the team at Yeda. She has a PhD in pharmacokinetics and medicinal chemistry from the Hebrew University. Why don't you take my chair that I just vacated a second ago. So to follow on a bit on thank you. To follow on what Professor Ariav or Gadi was just talking about, when you mentioned the book Startup Nation, the first thing that ran through my mind is that about a third or half of the book was given over to describing the resounding success of Better Place and how they had vision and implemented it, and the president of Israel got involved. And of course, sometime after the publishing of that book, we saw what happened to Better Place. Israel and Israelis in general are a very hyper, self-critical nation. If you come to Israel and read the Hebrew language financial press, you'll think that the sky is going to fall tomorrow. There won't be any high-tech industry. We don't have enough scientists, and the rest of the world is going to take over. Our talk is not quite what Satya said in his introduction, not exactly how successful we are, how great we are, but more what challenges we face, how we face those challenges, how we try to find solutions. I think that the value of any organization is based more on how it faces challenges than how it talks about its own successes. So just a quick two thank yous. One, thank you so much to Satya and to CL Educate for this fantastic event. We're really very happy to be here. And the second thank you is to the organizers for limiting us to just 5 slides in 15 minutes, because that way we have an excuse not to focus on success stories too much, and instead look tomorrow and past tomorrow specifically to talk about why and how we collaborate, why we need to collaborate, more specifically, with academia, with firms, with corporates, so that we can remain faithful to our mission. There are many ways in which research universities collaborate with other entities. Forgot about the slide. Let's go over the traditional ways, and then we'll get past that and talk about the more complicated ways that we implement in order to surmount difficulties. So the traditional ways that we collaborate with other entities are most simply students from different institutions might be exchanged, might spend some time at a different institution. 2 universities might have complementary IP that can be best commercialized, or maybe only commercialized as bundled technologies, and they will collaborate. Universities, of course, accept sponsored research funding from corporates and possibly negotiate later to collaborate on the technology, to license technology. Researchers might consult for companies in certain fields, sometimes with the same companies that receive licenses. And then, of course, our bread and butter is licensing technology. to companies and helping the companies along so that they can commercialize technologies, which goes beyond our mandate, which is research. I'll just note in this context that we're proud at Weizmann to have an ongoing sponsored research arrangement with Sun Pharma here in India, together with a Spanish university in the field of brain research and strokes. I'm also aware of some attempts at co-commercialization with one of the IITs, and of course we'll be very pleased to see more. These are the well-known forms of collaboration. Nearly every university is involved in them in some way, so we're not going to spend too much time on when matters progress seamlessly. Even though, of course, nothing's easy in tech transfer. And I'll also mention at this point that I think the term tech transfer has exhausted its usefulness. Transfer denotes one point in time where before that the university has the technology, and then after that point in time it goes to the company. And as I'll show in a moment, it's not that easy anymore, and the attempts have to be much more collaborative and tailored to the specific technologies. We call these efforts bridging the gap, which means that when the research ends, technology is not quite ready to go to the firms and the corporates, and various efforts have to be implemented, which we'll get down into the weeds in a second and discuss in detail. We call that bridging the gap, and Netta is a project manager at our Bridging the Gap section in Yeda, and in a moment she'll discuss in detail the types of efforts that we make. Before that, just a few words about the Weizmann Institute, which you can see in the slide. We're one of 8 public universities in Israel, but the only one that's devoted solely to the basic sciences. We have only 5 faculties with biology, biological chemistry, physics, mathematics, which also includes computer science. We don't have a medical school, we don't have an engineering school, we don't have an MBA program. One other thing we don't have is undergraduate students. All of our students are either an MSc, PhD, or postdoc programs. This gives the researchers a great amount of freedom to pursue research in their labs without having the administrative and other responsibilities of educating undergrads. We also try to give as much freedom as we can to researchers to pursue those fields that they feel will be promising. The administration of Weizmann understands that it's the researchers who know best where the next discovery breakthrough might come from, and except in extreme cases, they just let them pursue and take the science where they think it should go. The numbers are impressive, at least to us, in the proportions of a country which, as Gadi mentioned, is less than metropolitan Hyderabad. We have about 700 PhD students at any given time, 400 postdocs, and our science PhDs are a pretty large proportion of all the science PhDs that are conferred in Israel. The operating budget is about 400 million US, and only about 1/3 of that comes from the government. The rest comes from various grants from our endowment. That also gives us an additional degree of freedom. Just a word about successes, even though I said we wouldn't talk about it. We do have one Nobel laureate for chemistry, Professor Ada Yonat. She received the Nobel a number of years back, and there are also a number of alumni who left Weizmann for other pastures and received their Nobel Prizes there. Some of whom have actually come out and said that they would have stayed in Weizmann if they'd been offered tenure, but they weren't, so we lost out on a bit. And lastly, we're proud to have a multiplicity of nationalities among our student body, especially in the PhD programs. And it's very common when you walk around the campus to see quite a few saris and salwars among the students who are taking breaks from their lab work. So now I want to talk more about bridging the gap. So we started to speak about technologies which are great inventions in themselves, but not ripe for commercialization. And once technology transfer was just a transfer, researchers in their labs would make a discovery, they'd patent it, they'd write a nice paper in Nature or in some other reputable journal, and then a firm would come along, say, we like this, we'll take a license to your patent, and then we'll develop the drug, or we'll develop the process, the chemical process, and then and pay you royalties. For some time now, it hasn't been that easy. I can tell you that each and every one of our 9 or 10 major licenses that we've negotiated and signed in the last year have not been simple. Each one of them has had their own measure of special efforts that had to be invested in order to help the company along, do additional research, procure services from third parties. And this is due to a number of circumstances that have arisen. First is the rise of private equity and their natural and understandable aversion to risk, their aversion to long-term profitability prospects, particularly in the pharma field. Similar to that, in the same field, the companies have a huge number of compounds. Once we would find a compound, we would show in a mouse model that the compound was effective to treat a certain disorder. Company would say, very nice, we'll take it, we'll try to develop it, run through phase 1, 2, 3. These days, there are so many potential compounds that have already been discovered. Some have even been discovered by the big pharma companies themselves that they just aren't interested in getting another one and taking the risk and spending tens or hundreds of $millions on developing a drug that comes from outside when they have so many different candidates that they can use inside. Another one of the circumstances that contributes to the difficulty, and it's actually something that we welcome, and I'm not in any way saying it's a bad thing, and that's competition from other tech transfer organizations. In the US, until the Bayh-Dole Act of 1980, it was more or less illegal for universities to give exclusive licenses on the results of research that was funded by the federal government, which meant that they really couldn't give any exclusive licenses, and that meant that no companies would even entertain the thought of taking a license if anybody else could then use the invention. It took a number of years in the US for technology transfer to find its footing and to find the right way of the right balance and the right way of doing things. And it's only in the last 10 years or so that we see so many tech transfer organizations making very admirable efforts. And of course, the end result is that if a corporate is looking to sponsor research, looking to in-license some technologies, of course, that's only when he's not looking for a very specific technology invented in one university, then he has a number of very world-famous and reputable institutions to choose from among. It also means that those companies don't have to go overseas. It's easier for a Silicon Valley company to go to Stanford and ask them for research than to fly 20 hours and land in Tel Aviv and then speak to the Weizmann Institute. Of course, that also helps us because we collaborate with the same universities, and that increases the value of our joint collaboration. One other very important circumstances, the decreased enforceability of patents in the U.S. I'm sure many of you have heard about the relatively new proceedings that the U.S. allows before the PTAB, I believe it is. You don't have to go to court anymore to ask to invalidate a patent. If you're an infringer of a patent in the U.S. and the patent owner will assert the patent and try to sue you for infringement, the first thing you do now is to go to the U.S. Patent Office. You don't have to go to federal court, and you actually put the onus on the patent owner to prove that the patent is valid. You don't have to prove it's invalid. You say, I think this patent's invalid, and the patent owner has to go through a lot of hoops and spend a lot of money proving that it is valid. This means that a bare patent that we offer to a corporate doesn't have the same value that it once did. They know that they might get some knowledge that eventually, once the patent application is published, will become public knowledge, and their ability to prevent other companies from practicing the same invention decrease to some extent. That means that nobody wants a bare patent license anymore. They'd like the patent. They would like some additional know-how that the scientist can offer them. They might like consulting from the scientist. And it also lowers the value that we can attribute to our invention in the greater value of their product. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, academia does not want the reputation of engaging too much in commercialization. We don't have time to go into this issue too much, but academia is a bit like the goose that laid the golden eggs. It can come up with some very excellent results, that great things can be done with them, but if the emphasis is put on those results, on research results that are suitable for commercialization at the expense of the basic research, then very, very soon we're going to see academia only focusing on that. There's certainly enough financial incentives both for the researchers and also for the universities to shift their focus away from basic science and just tailor research towards what the corporates need. And of course, the end result will be that in a few short years, there will be neither basic research nor results of basic research that can feed industry. It's interesting that in Israel, there's zero legislation that governs how universities are allowed to commercialize their patents. They can sell patents, they can license them. And we see that empirically, they have not taken advantage of this lack of regulation. And speaking as someone from Weizmann, I see every single day the struggles that the administration of the university and the leadership at Yeda go through to ensure that we're not overstepping our mandate, that we're not turning Weizmann into an applied research supplier. Sometimes researchers will come, will say, here, we have a $500,000 grant from this company, and they'd like us to focus on one thing, and sometimes we'll tell them, no, you can't do that because we feel it's too commercial and it's going to take us away from what our main focus is supposed to be. So let's say we have some research results from a lab, and it's not mature enough for commercialization, and we'll get to the concrete examples in a moment. One knee-jerk reaction by a university or a technology transfer organization would be, let's form a spin-out. It'll get some funding and it'll take the problem off of our hands. But for the same reasons that we mentioned before, finance is not interested in long-term returns. It's hard to get it. They wouldn't get the right people. So in that case, the university acting as an accelerator in the sense that they would provide seed money for a startup would probably end in failure, just for the same reason that the technology started as an unripe technology, and it would remain that way. So after this somewhat high-level survey of why not all technologies can be commercialized, I'd like to ask Netta to continue. She's going to review the major types of gaps between basic research and commercialization, and the various ways that we can bridge those gaps. Netta.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I'd like to review the major type of gaps between basic research and market and how we can bridge them. Okay, so the science at the Weizmann Institute, as Aaron mentioned, is very broad spectrum. It ranges from biology through physics, chemistry, computer science, agriculture, and more. When our team hears of a new promising discovery or invention, but it's still too far from commercializing, we can focus and help the scientists and direct them to an actual target. When a scientist identifies a potential product or inventions which are not part of their research routine, we can support initial steps in order to provide proof of concept and register a patent. Once the proof of concept was established and the patent was submitted, in order for the patent not to be rejected, sometimes further studies and experiments need to be executed and need to be performed, and our team helps design and execute these kind of experiments in order to strengthen the patent and reduce the chances that it is rejected. Okay. In most cases, academia lacks the knowledge of what makes a discovery valuable from a commercial perspective. So our team helps direct and guide the scientists, and we mentor the scientists in order to be more focused on the demands of the market. Sometimes we even hire experts in order to, in different fields, in order to guide and mentor the scientists, and even us, the tech transfer team. So, I'll give you some examples from the drug development field for examples of gaps and how we can bridge them. Okay, so the first gap relates to the drug substance. The drug substance is the active entity inside of a drug. Most bridging methods relate to outsourcing, as we lack the capability of doing it in-house, meaning in academia. Okay, so at early stages of research, the drug substance is not well characterized. It sometimes includes several active entities, and it is not manufactured under good manufacturing procedures. This restrains us from moving forward towards marketing. So the solution would be to engage a CRO to provide a fully characterized single active entity, and it going along the way to manufacture the substance in a good manufacturing procedure. The second gap relates to the drug product. Early stages active entities are mostly administered in the labs by intravenously or intraperitoneal routes of administration. In order to improve commercial value, we would need to find the best way for oral administration. And oral formulation is an art form. It is provided mainly by highly expert CROs, and we aim to find the best formulator for each specific project. In academia, mainly in-house, we lack the ability to perform studies that are required by regulation for drug development, mainly toxicology and pharmacokinetics. Also, sometimes we lack the best animal models in order to bring this invention to market. So again, we engage CROs that these are their expertise. And by that, we promote the invention toward an actual product. Okay, so if we're cutting to the chase, let us summarize by reviewing the potential collaboration in which Israel and India can cooperate. Okay, so we have first the straightforward collaboration, meaning outsourcing studies at highly expert CRO and corporates to do drug substance manufacturing, to do animal models, to do the toxicology and the pharmacokinetics. And if we want to widen the potential collaborations, we need to find novel strategies. And the novel strategies would include inter-academic development of early stage technologies ready for licensing, but that are not fully developed. So this could lead to this will lead to working together between two research institutes. The second collaboration would be between consultants and medicines. As I mentioned before, we're looking for experts in different fields of science. And once we find the right expert, they can, after collaboration, take this invention and become the entrepreneur and take this invention forward and lead it to the market. Aaron, would you like to conclude?
Netta, thank you so much for that. Just to end off, I would be remiss if I didn't direct everyone to our website, which is here. We have a number of open technologies that are listed on the website. And I also welcome contact from any of you. We recognize that there are many institutions that are very successful scientifically and don't always enjoy the correct regulatory, possibly financial circumstances which allow them to do effective tech transfer. And if we can be in touch with those institutions to learn from them, to perhaps share our experiences in the past, either at this conference or later after we're all back home, we would certainly welcome that. Thank you so much. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Neta. We'll quickly move to Jay. Over to you. Jay perhaps sees more startups per day than anybody else in this room, so he can speak a lot about.
Thanks. Thank you, Satya. I just want you guys to take note of every sandwich that you've had in your life. And the reason I mention that is when you're caught in a very humbling experience where you have stalwarts like the two gentlemen who've spoken before me, and you have alma mater speaking after you, the thing to take note of is that the most memorable thing in the sandwich is always in the middle. So that's me. And I say that with all humility. I won't take too much time, but I will try and get you to see the difference between two classes of people, innovators and entrepreneurs. And these are, they have fundamentally different methodologies in operating. Quick show of hands, how many entrepreneurs in the room? Okay, great. How many innovators? And clearly there will be an overlap, an intersect of the two circles. Excellent. Can I request the entire room to stand up? And what you'll do for the next 2 seconds is to just stretch. Thank you very much. Please have a seat. There's no reason why I did that. Yeah, exactly. Other than to wake myself up, I don't know about you. And that's a function of really just one thing. One of my favorite sports is baseball. And regardless of every game that is played in a stadium, in the 7th inning, there's something called the 7th inning stretch. And the entire stadium wakes up and they stretch. And that is exactly what you did. But thanks for that. So what I'm going to do is walk you through two stories. A story of innovation, which is very, very unheralded. But I was very much a part of the tail end of that story, and I live to tell the tale. And hopefully you'll appreciate why innovation is what it is, and I'll try to gel that with the story of T-Hub. Quick show of hands for the last time. Anyone who does not know of T-Hub? Wow, really? Everybody knows about T-Hub? Clearly my PR machinery is working. Thank you. As an entrepreneur, lesson number one, always sell yourself. Case in point. So the first story begins in 1969. A gentleman in UCLA by the name of Kleinrock built this beautiful rack filled with vacuum tube-based electronics and decided to call his friend in Stanford Research Labs and sent a message on a piece of copper wire on a telephone line. And on his terminal, he decided to type out 5 letters, L-O-G-I-N. And the idea was over the copper line, after a whole bunch of mucks and demucks at the other end, you will get the terminal at the other end to display L-O-G-I-N. So he typed L, picked up the phone, called his friend and asked him, did you get the L? A few minutes later, the L shows up on the terminal. Pressed O, a few minutes later, O shows up at the end of the terminal. Pressed G, and the system crashed. So literally and figuratively, the first ever words on the internet was lo. Lo and behold. But the story doesn't end there. This is 1969, Kleinrock. Fast forward to 1974, Bob Kahn met with another genius, Windsurf, and they decided to build a beautiful stacked layered approach to something called TCP, and then they eventually became TCP/IP. But the beauty of TCP/IP is that it made it very, very amenable for the entire tech community to build on top of that, on top of the existing hardware from 1969. For those nerds and techies and electrical engineers in the room, other than me, you will understand and appreciate what TCP/IP is. TCP/IP allowed the fraternity of engineers to come together and build on top of that. Fast forward to 1984, Tim Berners-Lee comes up with the notion of building on top of these two pieces of infrastructure, and he built HTML, HTTP, and URL. And the idea there was to take the existing infrastructure and have the ability for grandmothers across the world to be able to communicate. And today, the internet, which drives everything from this guy to WhatsApp, to Instagram, to Google, to Facebook, to the ambulance vehicle that drives across the road, to GPS systems, they all bank on fundamentally three things that have not changed from then till now, from HTTP, HTML, URL, to TCP/IP, to the good old-fashioned rack, which of course has gone through digital transformation of communication. So the question is, why did I tell you the story? And the answer is open innovation. At no point in this journey did any of these guys come and decide that I'm going to build a patent out of it, and for every little packet that is transferred, I'm going to make money out of it. Had that happened, all the wonderful things that you're able to do with this guy today would probably, arguably, not have taken off. And that is the fundamental idea of open innovation. Without open innovation, most things that you see that drives, in the Indian context at least, frugality through technology would and will not happen. That's story number one, and I want you to identify with that because that's open innovation. Story number two, and I'll try to bring semblances from my own life, is that of the entrepreneur. You know, unfortunately today we are caught up in the world where entrepreneurship is lifestyle. It's a fun thing to do. Most entrepreneurs go out and build business plans as if to demonstrate that the need to build a business is to go raise capital. When in reality, if anything, that's far from the truth, and it should be the exact opposite. You raise capital to go build a business because you're on the path to building something new and solving a pain point. And keep that in mind. Entrepreneurship is not about building a billion-dollar business. Entrepreneurship is about having $1 million in about probably a year or two, running into working capital issues where you get a $2 million order and you don't have the capital to serve it, and therefore you go to the bank, you ask for an LC, you put down collateral, and the collateral doesn't come from anything but your own house as a promoter. Halfway through the project, things tumble. Your 100-member team now has not been paid for 2 months. 60 of them quit because they have their own families to serve. You go back to your wife crying, and you figure out that I've got to put my house down as collateral and probably sell it. You ask your parents at the age of, in your mid-30s, that I need money because I'm a bit of a failure at this point in time. Go back, put that money down, and you go all in. That is entrepreneurship. It is all in. There are no two ways about it. This is not meant for all. And mark my words, this is the toughest thing that you will do in your lives. You will deal with the worst crises hitting you at the same time. You will have the trifecta of a shitstorm hitting you. That is entrepreneurship. And if you're willing to go down that path, go down that path. And that is what will make the next India. That will be what will allow us to become the next density of Israel. So on those two notes, let me try and converge and quickly summarize. The reason why we do what we do at T-Hub is fundamentally by understanding that you build an ecosystem from ground up. To build an ecosystem from ground up and become the next Silicon Valley, you need three things. You need diversity, you need density, and you need momentum. You need diversity of race, you need diversity of gender, you need diversity of technologies, you need diversity of demographics. You just need diversity. Without that, that's the foundation of laying an entrepreneurial ecosystem. You need density because in a little cluster, like you both mentioned, the ability to move the entire ecosystem comes from having that density. You need momentum because as large companies move, the smaller ones, the middle of the model also gets pushed. You need those three things. And that's what we've been able to pull off in the last 2 years at T-Hub. And arguably, that story will not work for all. Every single cluster, every single city, every single nation state has its own story. This has been our story, and we've pivoted multiple times to make this happen. So on that note, I'm going to end by just quoting two of my favorite people. One is Michael Jordan, and this is true to the context of entrepreneurship. I have failed 9,000 shots in my life, I have been given 300 opportunities to win a game, and I have been given the ball 36 times to take the winning shot, and I have failed. I have failed, I have failed, I have failed again, and I have failed again, and that is why I succeed. That is entrepreneurship. Thank you. It should go to Michael Jordan, not me. And on the last note, the other favorite gentleman that I adore and love is Einstein. And this is true to the context of innovation. He said, if you cannot explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't have it in your own head. And innovation is exactly that. You got to get iteratively closer and closer and closer to the problem that you're trying to solve, which is why it's different from invention. The closer you get through simplicity, the more innovative it gets. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks a lot for putting up with me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. I'd request Professor Raghuram to take the podium and share his views.
Satya and Professor Gadi, Aaron, Jay, and well, the audience. I think good to bring Israel in the spotlight here. Well, a little thing that we've attempted at IIM Bangalore, and by the way, before that I must say there is a fair bit of IIM Bangalore here. So maybe some claps for that, because Satya and Jay both are alums of IIM Bangalore. Gadi, co-teaches at IIM Bangalore, and well, I have, I guess, a role in IIM Bangalore that could. Okay, so there has already been some efforts or some activities between India and Israel. We have a course where students study startup organizations in Israel and see what market opportunities exist in India. Professor Gadi has been, involved in that, and 3, 4, 5 faculty at different times have associated with Israel, done academic work, and we saw this as an opportunity that we must create a center in IIM Bangalore that will focus on the India-Israel partnership. Yeah. Where do I? Is there this one? Okay. Fine. So, well, actually, India and Israel, there has been bilateral collaboration since it was formally opened up in '92, and, well, got more momentum recently. President of Israel visited India in November 2016. Prime Minister Modi visited in July 2017. Of course, the earlier partnership was focused on defense and aerospace because I guess we thought that's something that Israel can offer us. Of course, more recently, we are seeing opportunities in agri-food tech, digital health, fintech. Well, a lot of whatever industry 4.0, mobile and telecom, water, energy. So, with people, our faculty visiting there, and we tried to say, what is this center? What does it really stand on? So, well, Israel offers a vibrant technology-based innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Thanks. India seeks to gain from this because of its strong aspirational entrepreneurial spirit. Well, Jay, I guess the entrepreneurship innovation, I have to get specific about it. I have to learn from you on that, but I guess I mean the whole thing there. And India offers a large market with innovative opportunities for penetration. Israel seeks to gain from this because of its strong aspiration for market scale-up. Partly, that it has to be a partnership, and that's how we are visualizing this. Of course, if you see in terms of R&D as a percentage of GDP, right, Israel is up there. Of course, South Korea is also moving up. On a per capita basis, of course, Israel is, I guess, the highest. Well, recently we had the ease of doing business rankings that came out, and I just thought we'd compare India and Israel. And while India just sort of moved into 100th position, Israel is there at 54. On most of the parameters, of course, Israel is better. Though I was surprised, I went back and checked about the getting electricity, and it is true. I mean, India is sort of, now it's easier to get electricity in India than in Israel. Getting credit, maybe, again, India seems to be ranking better than Israel. Of course, paying taxes is where we gained a lot, but we are still behind Israel. Paying taxes alone made a significant difference for India coming into the top 100. Of course, borders, Israel is better. Even with El Al, Israel seems to be better. Enforcing contracts, resolving insolvency, fine. So anyway, there's a lot for India to learn from Israel if we just use this as one parameter. Well, demographics, India 1.324 billion, Israel 8.5 million. So of course, Satya earlier said, maybe not India, but Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, Gurgaon. So yeah, that's where Bangalore is. Bangalore and Israel are about the same in population. Of course, area-wise, Bangalore is much smaller. Israel is bigger, though half of it, as Gadi was saying, is sort of desert. You can see GDP and, compared with, of course, in terms of total, India is bigger, but on a per capita basis, Bangalore is about $5,000 US, whereas Israel is 37,000, and India, of course, much lower. Of course, on a purchasing power parity basis, which is roughly 3.5 times for India, you would be a little closer, Bangalore still. Okay. So as I mentioned, we've already been doing work with Tel Aviv University, the College School of Management, jointly teaching courses. There's an exchange program. And then Technion and IAMB are part of the Global Network for Advanced Management. That's a global setup of about 28, actually now 29 schools. Yale University kind of gave the push there. So, why at IAMB? Well, there are ongoing academic collaborations. Israel and Bangalore are hubs for creativity and innovation. There is really no other similar initiative at management institutions. And there is another initiative at the OP Jindal University, where again there is an Israel center. So for us, it's to act as a hub for research on Indo-Israeli interactions in the field of technology, innovation, business strategy and history, government policies and culture by bringing scholars together, the business community and students. And of course, as a management school, to reach out to the business communities to help Israeli and Indian business communities integrate with their counterpart. So we hope to become a knowledge center and to nurture ongoing relationships with centers of Indian studies in Israel, and of course, disseminate the bunch of activities like any, management school. Enhance and consolidate what is already going on, then create specific executive education courses between Indian and Israeli management personnel, host, seminars and workshops, develop research and case studies of Indo-Israeli projects and businesses, and, a lot on this whole business of entrepreneurship innovation would be very, very exciting for some of our faculty to write case studies. And we also have the Center for Entrepreneurial Learning, and there is a good sort of connect between the Israel Center and the what we call as the NS Raghuram Center, NSR cell. Of course, nurture the entrepreneurial spirit by creating training programs for stakeholders for startup ecosystem. So in Bengaluru in India for technology-based innovation, and in Israel, for market scale-up. So we actually inaugurated this on November 5th. The ambassador of Israel to India was kind enough to come and grace the occasion. And these are some of his observations that he thought Bengaluru is an ideal center for startups, the collaboration being an excellent idea. And there is the Start Jerusalem program in Israel. And he hopes that center will bring like-minded individuals together. We had a guest there, Ajay Vipin Nanavati, who currently is the chairman of Syndicate Bank and formerly the CEO of 3M. 3M is known for innovation. 3M Israel and also 3M India. Interesting, Gadi had already given some of the cultural insights. Israeli people have learned to operate outside silos. So academia, government, industry work together, partly the irreverence and also down there, one of the bullets is they have a healthy healthy disrespect for hierarchy. They know how to accelerate the pace of decision making. They always aim to fulfill their goals and visions, speak their mind, focus on technology. Okay, and of course, I think the sheer survival instinct. And in a way, I think in India too, given numbers, a lot of, what we heard in the morning, the sheer attempt to drive costs down, even on maybe an existing known application, but the innovation is in driving costs down. So I think the sheer need to, to improve what is around us is maybe in some sense a common sort of cultural base or cultural fundamental between Israel and India. Well, recently the Economist Intelligence Unit came up with a survey where Bengaluru beat San Francisco in confidence to go digital. And Bengaluru was number 1. Top 5 digital cities, Bengaluru, San Francisco, Mumbai, New Delhi, and then Beijing. Of course, the methodology was they surveyed some 2,620 executives across 45 cities in partnership with the telecom firm Telstra Group. Anyway, the skills that are most in demand, and I thought this was also an interesting takeaway. One is, for the center, and in general for a management institution, what kind of skills or job profiles. So digital security is number 1. Big data analytics, cloud computing skills, social media, and of course AI. Of course, somebody was saying AI, I think a couple of decades ago also we had heard about AI. Again, AI is sort of back in. Anyway, so that's, well, I guess that's really what I wanted to be saying. And we look forward to collaborating with Melting Pot and seeing how specifically the India-Israel Center can, catalyze more and how we can get ideas to make it a good sort of academic center. And we look forward to support from all of you. Yeah, thank you.
We have about 9 minutes as per the clock, and I'll straight away throw it open for any questions directed at anybody. And could we have somebody to help with the mic, please? Yeah. Here. And kindly do indicate who you are kind of posing the question.
It is a general question. It is general statement. I am Dr. Pratap Reddy, Chairman, Dhruva College of Management, with reference to J. Krishnan. In Rasalila, Nari Nari Nadma Murari, Hariki Hariki Nadma Vayari. He said sandwich is ensconced between 2 Israelis that I am converting into Rasalila. He is Krishna, both are Gopikas. And don't worry, you are Satyabhama, his wife. And Raghuram is of Ramayana, I are not concerned with that.
Is Lord Krishna.
Because he's all talking about Bengaluru. So Raghuram is not there in the picture. And about Gadi, I would like to make a statement.
Sure.
What do you call? रहीम के दोहे चलती को गाड़ी मिले हुए को खोया देख कबीरा रोया. He's a Gadi, but he is very mobile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. A couple of more questions.
Connecting them with the
In case you want to ask a question, could you please raise your hand so that we can come to you?
Krishnan. And he said,
There's
"I'm
one
out of
here,
it because I'm
one
part of
here.
the
Oh.
Rama lore."
In the front seat.
Myself, Dr. Adarsh Agarwal from Chitkara University, Chandigarh. My question is for Jai Krishnan. Like now you are the leading light as an incubator, successful incubator. So what's your take for the upcoming incubators coming up in universities? How they can move forward, what they should, directions from your side?
Got it. If I had the answer to that question, I guess I wouldn't be sitting here. But I'll give you my perspective, which is a very entrepreneurial perspective. So number one, you need to, as a university, you need to break away from, in the context of incubation, given where India is, which is, I don't know if you know the history of the Bayh Oil Act in the US in the 80s versus in India, it's still not for profit. And the difference between the two is that if you don't decouple academia from the concept of trying to commercialize innovations that come out of the university, the incubator will struggle. You need to start embracing as academia that commercialization is a very good thing. And that has been a challenge in India, fundamentally driven by frameworks. The second is, as an entrepreneur, you need to break even very quickly, have free cash flow that allows you to do what you're supposed to do as an incubator and not bank on your parent. And the parent in this case can be the academia, can be the government, state, or center. In fact, I have one of my board members sitting here. And we've had a tremendous board that gives us enough flexibility to do what we are supposed to do. But more importantly, we've broken even to in the context that we don't need to draw capital from anyone, right? So that allows us to do what we're supposed to do. So I think that would be my two big takeaways. And at the end of it all, just like entrepreneurship, your script is your own, right? There is no cookie cutter model that works for all. I think that those would be my 3 data points.
Thank you, Jay. The one here.
Hi, Jay. A question for you. Can someone be both innovator and entrepreneur? By balancing
absolutely.
openness and by balancing openness as well as commercialization.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see why not, but I'll have experts answer that.
I'll relate to something that was said in the morning. You know, fundamentally, it's about seeing, to see opportunity when other people see difficulties. That applies to the innovation part, okay? And the innovation, there's more randomness to innovation. We have to recognize that, okay? That the idea comes. And again, it was surveyed before, the sort of incremental and the sort of disruptive or something very, so that's the innovation part. Entrepreneurship is being able to see that it can be done differently. Both of them actually, you know, entrepreneurship and innovation are based on the notion of doing something different with a value, okay? So it's idea, value, and implementation. The idea and the value is sort of the terrain or the territory of the innovation. The value and the implementation is the area of the entrepreneurship. They're very close related. Honestly, if I had to put a sort of a line, I wouldn't be able to say when innovation is more concerned with entrepreneurship, because idea that has value but has not been implemented is not worth anything.
Just to throw in one bit, you know, you be yourself and let experts decide whether you're an inventor or an innovator or an entrepreneur. Don't worry about it. 3 minutes left. We'll take 2 questions.
Yeah.
Somebody from the back?
Hi,
Yeah, could we pick
Hi,
the-
this is
yeah.
Rajendra. I'm running IT company. I would like to ask you straightforward one question to Professor Raghuram. So you're talking more about Israel, investment in Israel and everything. Why don't you resonate in India as a vast country? Why we are running behind other countries when we have so many sources? You know, just I would like to give a hint. Just tell me something about. India. Hope you got my question, Professor.
Yeah. No. No, thank you.
Okay.
I think there are a couple of other drivers. So one is, I think, as institutions, we are seeking diversity. Diversity in terms of being able to learn. And I'm sure, in the morning we saw Professor Anil Gupta and, just the grassroots level innovation. And there is, I agree with you, tremendous learning opportunities within the country. But I think there is an inherent value in looking global. The thought that we are having at IIMB is, again, not just global. Let's focus there. And in fact, we've picked two countries. One is Japan, and the other is Israel, where we believe that, it's not necessarily like running behind other countries, but maybe here are certain values, attributes, something about the economy, which we can learn from. And so it's really, from that point of view. But we are absolutely open to learning from, all the exciting things happening in the country, within India. Yeah? So,
I will add to that, okay? 200 years ago, economist by the name of David Ricardo coined the term of comparative advantage. And comparative advantage actually relates to your question, okay? The partnership that, we see and I advocate between India and Israel is not based on sort of fixing weaknesses and actually would, in a similar occasion in Israel, I keep telling my my fellow Israelis, if we don't become very attractive place to source innovation, we will not exist, because India will catch up, China will catch up. The numbers will eventually yield the level, and the level of innovation, excitement in this country is intoxicating. So I'm going back to Ricardo, to sort of the beginning of the 19th century. When you exploit other partners' strength, even though you can be stronger than all aspects, both benefit. That's sort of counterintuitive, but that's actually proven mathematically. And that's what we are actually saying. And it has not been refuted so far. So the comparative advantage of Israel is in innovation. Can it be done elsewhere? Yes. Do you want to do that? You will eventually do it. Linking to it and including it part of you will make Israel better, make India better.
Thank you. Thank you, Gadi.
Last question.
I can't resist adding one sentence to it, saying that, from dependence, you get to independence. But the higher order of self-adequacy is interdependence. One who feels quite adequate about himself won't feel small to go and say, I want to learn these three things from you, you do phenomenally well. And then I'm likely to evoke a similar response from him, saying that maybe I can learn this one or two things from you. So as a country, we must do that from many, many places in the world. Our time is up. I will take a moment to thank this absolutely eminent panelists here for spending the time. You would have loved to have lots of questions.
Sorry to interrupt you. I have a last question. Can I ask it?
Can we take it offline?
Sure.
Can we take it offline? Please.
Sure.
I will ensure that it is addressed. Okay, because the next panel is waiting, just as a respect to their times. Thank you very much. There are large number of them. I'm getting WhatsApps saying some of them want to meet you on one-on-ones. Please give your time, and we'll be very happy to benefit from that.
Thank you. Can we have a huge round of applause for our esteemed group of panelists? I would request Mr. Ajit Kumar, President, CL Educate, to kindly grace the stage and present a memento as appreciation from our side. First and foremost to Professor Gadi Ariav. Can we have a round of applause for sir? Up next, Mr. Aaron Jaffe. Well, your round of applause shouldn't stop. Of course, we have Mr. Jay. Can we have a round of applause for him? And we have Dr. Raghuram. Can we have a round of applause for sir?